evolutionary perspective, we have at least two brains, at least two. The first is the neocortex. That's the brain that we are most proud of. The neocortex fills most of our head. It's in charge of our higher order processing, consciousness, ideas, beliefs, memory. It's there, part of it is there. It evolved a mere 40,000 years ago. It's a youngster. It's a youngster. The neocortex sits atop the second smaller brain, the reptilian brain, also called the brain stem. The reptilian brain is an ancient beast. It evolved 100 million years ago. And it is what controls what's called the fight or flight response. The fight or flight response is that reflexive action that precedes all conscious thought, that tells us either to run away very quickly or to stand and defend for our very survival. Psychologists say that the fight or flight response is the first stage of an adaptation syndrome to manage stress. Huh? The first stage of an adaptation syndrome to manage stress. What's stress? Stress is nothing but change. Something changed. And we notice something changed with respect to ourselves. What this sounds like to me is the first stage of the evolution of self-awareness. Self-awareness. The concept that there is something out there that is other than me, that there is something else not me. And that something else that is not me, it might get me or it might not. It might be fearful or it might not. And what I believe, what came to me, is that this, in the reptilian brain, is the beginning of the ego. It's the seat of the ego. That beginning of self-awareness that there is something other than me. This week, at the urging of two of our congregants, I went to see a film called I Am. And I want to tell you, I hope, not I hope, we will. As soon as it's released and we can purchase it at a reasonable cost, we're going to do that. And we're going to bring it here. We'll have a potluck and the movie following it. And then we'll discuss it. I think there are at least 3 people here that go, thumbs up, and everybody should see this. And I'm looking forward to seeing it a second time. Well, it's a nonfiction film. It's not a documentary per se, but it tells a story, and it involves scientists and psychologists and spiritual teachers. And part of the movie centers around the evolution in our culture of our beliefs around the ego, and what those beliefs have, how they've informed our ideas about competition versus cooperation. And one of the implicit questions in the film is this: why? Why have we structured our entire economic system on competition, the whole system on competition, unless what we have been doing is paying primary attention to our 100 million year old reptile, unless we've been paying primary attention to our ego. I think it's a very compelling premise. The film went on to show part of a study that was done. Scientists had, it was done on buffalo deer. And the scientists had this herd of deer, a very large herd, under observation for a great period of time. And they tracked and cataloged the entire social structure and order of the deer. And they witnessed 2 alpha males fighting for mating dominance and leadership, and they saw the dominant alpha male come out on top. And so they figured that at some point, this herd had to go to water. They had to water themselves. But they moved always as a group for protection. And so what the scientists figured was that at the appropriate time, the alpha male would raise his antlers and say, okay guys, we're going this way to this hole now. Now, here's what you need to know. This herd lived within the midst of 3 distinct watering holes. One was there, one was there, one was there. And when it was time to water, it wasn't what they anticipated. It wasn't the alpha male saying, let's go. This is what happened. The deer are grazing. That's what they do most of the time. So they're grazing, and a deer would look up and look in the direction of one of those 3 holes. Another deer would be grazing and look up in the direction of that hole. And this went on for some period of time. And it was essentially when the 51st deer looked up in the same direction as the prior 50, that is the moment that the deer moved to that hole at that time. They made the decision through majority consensus. They made it through cooperation. They made it when they knew that it was most advantageous in a collective consciousness to move to water at a particular hole. It's amazing. I mean, just you can think about that and take it down at least 3 levels, if not more. 3 levels of understanding of what is going on in that herd. And what a lot of our culture doesn't understand, they kind of miss 90% of what Darwin was, what he understood, what he learned. What Darwin was saying in the survival of the fittest was that it's not necessarily the individual best able to fight that is going to survive and flourish. It are the individuals that are best able to cooperate that are going to survive. It's cooperation that makes us fittest. And yet, so much of our social order is built around competition. If you hear me saying Dana's against competition, I'm not. There's a place, I think there's a season for everything, right? The Bible says so. There's a time for everything under heaven. It's a question in my mind of emphasis, degree, balance. You see, we are hardwired for cooperation. It is in our DNA. And these scientific studies are proving this, demonstrating this over and over and over again. And yet, the reptilian brain, the ego, I submit, plays a very important role. I believe my ego allows me to recognize you without dominating you. It allows me to feel your pain without becoming your pain. It allows me to dance with you without stepping on your feet. You see, I think it's the ego that allows 2 things. We have choice. The ego allows the recognition of healthy boundaries, a healthy self-awareness, as well as unhealthy, unsupportive, fear-based beliefs. The ego does both. I believe that if we deny the ego, if we dismiss the shadow, we are dismissing part of us. We are trying to surgically remove part of ourselves. We are denying part of God. Because there is only one power and one presence. Only one. Nothing stands against God. There is nothing in the universe that wishes evil to anyone. This is what we believe. that includes the ego and the shadow. They're mere information systems. Your ego, your shadow, simply provides you information. If you don't like the information it provides, pay attention to it. Heal it. Nurture it. Allow it to become whole. It's simply information. It's not something to be denied. What happens when we deny something? It persists. It grows. Whatever you persist, even your ego, even your shadow, the more you deny it and push against it, the more it grows. Embrace it. Befriend it. It's merely information. Everything that you do is sacred. I want to say that again. Everything that you do is sacred. The most caring thought, the most loving thought, the meanest thought, and the vilest thought are all sacred. Is that hard for me to get my brain and my heart around? It's hard. It's not easy. This is the work of spiritual quantum leaps. This is the work of transformation. But everything about you is sacred. Unity is premised on one belief and one belief alone, that there is only God, no exceptions. No exceptions. None. All of you is sacred. All of you. And all of you are sacred. Until we embrace every part of ourselves, embrace it and befriend it and learn from it, we can learn from the message of the ego. We can embrace its proper power. You see, until we embrace every aspect of ourselves, every part of ourselves, we disempower ourselves. So befriend your ego. Hafiz, we have a poem for you that our readers are passing out now. Hafiz wrote a poem called Now is the Time. And you're each going to get a copy of this. It speaks to today's message. And just in case anybody missed it, the message is, there is nothing in the universe against you. Nothing. Not your ego, not your shadow, not anything else. It is all there to inform us. We simply learn we need to learn its message. Not to deny the message, not to run from it. Got it? Thank you. And I'd like us to read this now together. Does everyone have one? Please. Please join me. Now is the time to know that all you do is sacred. Now, why not consider a lasting truce with yourself and God? Now is the time to understand that all your ideas of right and wrong were just a child's training wheels to be laid aside when you can finally live with veracity and love. Hafiz is a divine envoy whom the Beloved has written a holy message upon. My dear, please tell me, why do you still throw sticks at your heart and God? What is it in that sweet voice inside that incites you to fear? Now is the time for the world to know that every thought and action is sacred. This is the time for you to deeply compute the impossibility that there is anything but grace. Now is the season to know that everything you do is sacred. And I want us to have an experience of the depth of these words. And so now I invite us into prayer. I invite us into prayer, however you want to go into